Okay, hi everybody, and let's see. So we are at the 62nd program here in the externalization of the hierarchy, and I would just like to bridge a little bit here. I have a bridge in back of me, the Golden Gate Bridge. This is the continuation of Master DK's series of bridging treatises. And I'm making some commentary that may be of use as we work along. So this is a statement we made in the last program. And then it goes on to number 62. The hierarchy is therefore along all lines, many of which I may not indicate or upon which I may not enlarge, preparing itself for the experience of physical manifestation. It is also endeavoring to, quote, create the needed responsive apparatus which will be of such a nature that members of the hierarchy may function with a minimum of difficulty on earth and will experience the least possible measure of handicap, because, you know, to be with us here at this lower level would normally present a great handicap to their powers, and they need all the power and functionality they can possibly muster, possibly gather. They will thus be enabled to give full time and attention to the work to be done by them in physical incarnation. Okay, so we understand that they have quite a preparation to undergo in ways that we cannot understand, and nor is Master DK at liberty to discuss what those methods of preparation really are. Now we go on. They are endeavoring also to establish a closer telepathic rapport and a more intimate, though strictly impersonal, relationship with their disciples on all rays, so that there can be a free interplay of thought and a consequent better hierarchical integrity, and one which, no matter what may happen in the three worlds, cannot be disrupted or in any way lessened. So basically, there will be many disturbing situations, but in an impersonal manner. They want to make sure that their instructions, their wishes, their intentions can always get through. I wonder how many of us feel that we have with the hierarchy a clear line of communication so that we are receiving their instructions in a clear and undistorted manner. I would imagine that not so many of us know this to be the case. or feel this to be the case. Although for them, no astral plane exists and glamour is entirely non-existent, they have to learn to do a most peculiar thing, to work on the astral plane because it exists for humanity and for the animal kingdom. To work on the astral plane, to traverse this region of glamour, and then to demonstrate light in dissipating fog in a manner for which there has hitherto been no call. And then he says an interesting and wise thing. The level of phenomena we call the astral plane can be contacted, but for the masters it has no reality. Interesting, isn't it, that the animals look at their sleep patterns, certainly have an astral plane to deal with. There's such similarity or such a relationship between the Lord of the fourth kingdom and the Lord of the fifth, a difficult intertwining karma. So, you know, the animals are even more deeply in the realm of glamour, but not having self-consciousness, they don't know it. And even human beings, deeply in glamour in their own way, also do not realize that so many of their preoccupations are with the unreal. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness into light. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from death to immortality. So the masters are also involved in the setting up of conditions which will help dissipate the fogs which to them are completely unreal, though sufficiently existent to deal with as glamorous, as illusory states. So DK is saying something here that is unusual. They have a most peculiar thing to do, the masters have, to work on the astral plane because it exists for humanity and for the animal kingdom. To work on the astral plane to traverse this region of glamour, to pass through it without being affected whatsoever by this unreality, and then to demonstrate light in dissipating fog in a manner for which there has hitherto been no call. Okay. Now he says this interesting thing. None of this information may make much sense to you, but I am simply seeking to go on record for the sake of those who will come after you. And indeed, we might have to pause to really interpret what he has said. The problem of there being no existent astral plane for the masters, and yet the astral plane is a region in which they work, is a difficult one to solve. I guess they see it for what it is, and are unaffected by it. There is little more, he says, that I may give you anent adjustment and alignment with the hierarchy. It is rapidly proceeding, and just so far as disciples demonstrate upon the outer physical plane and in the three worlds their affiliation with an ashram, they will share in this dual process. They will share an approach that hierarchy is using. The astral plane will be non-existent to them, and yet they will work within it, helping to dissipate what for them is an unreality. And so, are you prepared for this? He asks. And probably the answer has to be that we are not by any means completely prepared. The group connected with the dissipation of glamour had a lot of difficulty. And he never was able, due to the onset of the war, able to bring it to its intended usefulness and fruition. But then again, there's still another 180 years left, let us say, in this seed group project, so there will be opportunity again to work and to carry forward what needs to be carried forward. Okay. I'm just making a few little adjustments here. Excuse me. All right, friends, we'll see whether this microphone helps a little bit. Now we move on to a new section. Are you prepared for this? He says. And now he has this section called In Connection with the Council Chamber of Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the World. All right, there's quite a bit here. So let's work ahead. And I'll just basically highlight this. As this subject concerns one of the 7 goals, towards which the masters aim after they have attained the 5th initiation, it will be obvious to you that there is little that I can say about it. Okay. So we're dealing with high things here. One of the 7 paths for which the way of higher evolution prepares the senior initiates is the path of earth service. We might say that a master is a senior initiate. This path, as you know, keeps the masters attached to service in the three worlds for a period much longer than the average. It involves tremendous sacrifice, to stay behind and to work in a very confined area, when in fact there are opportunities of a much greater nature which would lie ahead. But then, Sanat Kumara sort of taps particular masters and requests that they remain with him, helping on this particular planet. And I imagine that, knowing what they know, they are hardly in a position to refuse. Now, I think the Buddha was not tapped, but he chose the path of earth service, which the Tibetan said was not his path at all. So, just as the disciple, it involves tremendous sacrifice. I want to somehow point that out, and we can dwell on the idea. Just as Sanat Kumara could be doing other things, but chose to remain, and is thus called the Great Sacrifice. Just as the disciple has to live a dual life, with one part of his reflective nature and awareness centered in the life of the hierarchy, and the other part of his mental responsiveness equally centered on life in the three worlds, and this simultaneously. So the master, when he chooses this path, forms a constituent part of the council chamber of the Lord of the world, and at the same time works consciously in the three worlds via the hierarchy of which he remains a part, and with the human and subhuman kingdoms in nature. The dual life is difficult to sustain in balance, just as we who are learning to be true disciples find the dual life of discipleship difficult, but necessary, given what we are attempting to do. As evolution proceeds, says the Tibetan, he will work increasingly via humanity, because humanity will be shouldering its responsibilities as the macrocosm of the lesser microcosm, in charge of the three lower kingdoms, really. Yes, so we're talking about how the disciple living the dual life has to function, and how the master, on his own higher levels, living the dual life has to function. And maybe this goes on for other and higher beings. This idea of, I look above, I help below. So as evolution proceeds, he will work as the macrocosm of the lesser microcosm. This dual activity entails much specialized training. And as the initiatory process becomes exoteric and men everywhere recognize it and participate in it, the training which members of the hierarchy also undergo will not be so secret and mysterious as it is today. Just imagine a time when the hierarchy is recognized by the majority as existent, and some human beings are coming so close to the fifth kingdom of nature, the kingdom of souls, in which so many members of the hierarchy participate, that they will be able to understand that to be a member of the great universal church of Christ is nothing final, and that evolution goes on and on and on for trillions upon trillions of years in this particular universe and in all particular universes. Our sense of time will be greatly altered. Anyway, the time has not yet come to publicize it, this method of training. But we can gather some hints from what Master DK has said. And we realize many of the difficulties involved. After all, when we look at the triple triangles, we find that today hierarchy is reaching out toward Shambhala and is not quite even halfway there. But there's something special about these masters who sacrifice so much to remain on the path of earth service. They do then become constituent parts of the council chamber. So their range is wide. So the master, when he chooses this path of earth service, or is requested to choose it, and then mark down what his succeeding path will be, he forms a constituent part of the council chamber, and yet works with hierarchy and works with the lower kingdoms as well. All right. Only certain further generalizations are here possible, some of which are already known to you because they are so broad that their inclusions and implications are obvious. This, for instance, concerns the center where the will of God is known. Here at Shambhala, is that a hint? Well, is it a hint that Master DK is one of those who has chosen, or who has been chosen, for the path of earth service, and therefore can be, in a sense, a member of that council chamber? Is that what it's saying? Or is he simply saying, if you are in the center where the will of God is known, when he says, here at Shambhala? But he says it. Here at Shambhala, those who have unified their personality, will, and their the spiritual will with the universal will, and such a unification eventually brings knowledge. It is, however, not knowledge as you understand it. So let's indicate this. Is this his own experience, or is he simply speaking about those who have made it their experience? It does seem very much that he is on the path of earth service, and among other things will be teaching the ancient methods of healing in the flesh and to his disciples. So this unification of personality will, spiritual will, and universal will, what is this universal will? Is it, can we call this will of the monad? Can we do that? Because normally when we speak of universal anything, we're not talking about the entire universe. We are speaking of the solar system as a kind of universe. Okay. I'm going to switch this around. When this alignment is established. It is, however, not knowledge as you understand it. It is a blend of wisdom based on knowledge, understanding based on intuitive perception, and identification based on alignment, esoterically comprehended. A very important sentence somehow. And one that needs emphasis. It is, however, not knowledge as you understand it. It's wisdom and knowledge together. It's sort of Venus and Jupiter with the Earth. It is a blend of wisdom based on knowledge, understanding based on intuitive perception. This is the Buddhic component, very much based on Jupiter and to a certain extent Neptune, and identification, which is a Neptunian factor, based on alignment. We'd really have to ponder this. Because if the alignment is sufficient, it is recognized that one is all others and that all others are one. Identification, alignment reveals this identification. And I've called it a kind of infuception. Identification is our goal, and it is a monadic state. We may have harmonization in the soul and unification, but not a complete identification in oneness, such as granted by those who have managed to align with the monad and, in a sense, recognize themselves as the monad. For this peculiar condition or awareness, we have no word in any language, and only the utilization, the trained utilization of the abstract mind can possibly convey to you even an embryonic factual conception. So really it's kind of a triple condition, isn't it? Knowledge, wisdom, understanding, intuition, alignment, identification. But that type of imaginative conception, that's interesting because we have to use, I think, the imagination as it relates to the Buddhic plane, at least, will become more common during the next 2 centuries. And my words here will therefore serve an ultimate purpose. He's writing a century ahead, or 2, really. And yet counting on the fact that he will be read and appreciated and understood. There, that's a little better. Those who form the council chamber of the great Lord are under no misapprehension as to his will because they see it whole. Okay, well, I think within certain limitations, they see it whole. We have to remember that even high members of the hierarchy know only the first letter, or maybe it's the first syllable, of the name of Sanat Kumara. But by comparison, they do see the will of the great Lord whole, even though it seems clear that he retains knowledge of certain aspects of his will for himself. Now he'll give an example here. Remember Paul and how he was responsible for one of the rents in the veils of Maya, the one which was connected with synthesis and the first ray. Paul, the initiate, hints at this when writing one of the epistles. He is in touch then with certain members of the hierarchy and is concerned with the theme of love, which is the fundamental hierarchical theme and motive. So, you know, Paul, an initiate of high attainment at the time, certainly the 3rd degree, certainly that much. And he says to them, quote, "Now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face." That would be, you know, certainly mastership. "Now we know in part, but then shall we know, even as we are known." Close quote. He there points towards the future progress of the hierarchy, a progress which remains as yet only a vague promise, lacking form and shape. But he wrote for initiates to whom Love was a growing vital concern, and to whom love and its practice meant light and the basic motif of all living divine activity. So no wonder he is difficult for the average churchgoer to understand. And this, of course, is the famous statement about seeing through a glass darkly. But the future will open up the sight. And he knows that we are seen now by the higher initiates, even now, and we shall be seen as they see us now, or we shall see as they see us now. Going on, well, and leaving much unanalyzed and much to explore, but necessarily going on. The Tibetan and initiates like Paul, they do write far ahead for those who will come after. And it is not easy for their immediate audience to gather the full sense and meaning of what they say. It is not possible to reveal the will of God and the motivating purpose of his manifesting self. There are, I suppose, aspects of him which are not his manifesting self, except to those who have demonstrated perfected love and who register no sense of disunion or the faintest reaction to separateness. They do not come under the sway, the influence of the great heresy of separateness. Whereas disciples such as we are certainly do, we are affected by that heresy and we experience its seeming reality, though to higher initiates it is all unreal. At Shambhala, the great lives who functioned there, the sometimes called the lights which carry out the will of God, the great lights who function there not only see manifestation whole and apart from all the limitations of time, but they feel all the major evolutionary impulses which are bringing the developing world into line with the divine will. So we can see how far from where we stand is shambolic awareness or perception. As I said, I've kind of used a term for monadic or shambolic perception, which I call infuseception, involving a type of perception based on the infusion of subject and object, or the infusion of the subject in the object. And we can talk about it, of course, but we have to really experience it. They embody those impulses not in terms of progressive movement, but in terms of one great divine and spiritual reaction. So he's trying to give us a few little hints about what this shambolic perception is all about. So imagine perceiving apart from the limitations of time, feeling the evolutionary impulses which embrace the entire sphere, the entire Earth scheme, and maybe our entire local universe, which we call our solar system. So this is perception in terms of much greater wholes than normal perception will convey. The idea can perhaps be best understood by you in terms of the eternal AUM, which is the symbol of the eternal now. Maybe as that eternal AUM is sounding, not the AUM, which is a rather severe limitation when compared to the OM. But we can conceive all this in terms of the eternal AUM, which is the symbol of the eternal now. You have been told, and it has been demonstrated, that the AUM is composed of one major sound, 3 minor sounds, and 7 subsidiary vibratory tones. So there is a kind of 10 included within the 1. The whole Kabbalah is there with the 3 superimposed above the 7, and all of it summing to a unity, the 1. Think of the eternal now. And it certainly does call for a different type of perception rather than fragmented sequential perceptions. The normal kind of perception within the consciousness of those still affected by the great heresy of separateness. Our task is to make the many into the one, or to perceive those fragmented many as a oneness. And we really have to work at that. Or sometimes it does come upon us, and at other times we have to work very hard to even come close. And even then it may not dawn upon us. But anyway, the 1, the 3, the 7, so you have the 1 and the 10, or the 1 as the 10, and the 10 as the 1. So it is with the will of God, which is embodied and held in synthesis by the members of the council chamber. To them, as they, quote, hold the will of God in solution, it is one clear note. As they see that will in motion, It is three abiding chords carrying outward into the worlds, into all the worlds, the purpose of the One, who for eons will abide. As they impel that will to demonstrate, it is seven vibratory tones drawing out into the reflected worlds the structure of the plan, should we say maybe the archetype of the plan, and thus the note, the chords, the tone, and the tone produce the plan, reveal the purpose, and indicate God's will. Oh, this is a wonderful statement. Yeah. Mm. And it holds so much, one is inclined to read it again. The eternal Om, the symbol of the eternal now. But it's the AUM, not the OM. You have been told, and it has been demonstrated, that the AUM is composed of one major sound, three minor sounds, and seven subsidiary vibratory tones. So it is with the will of God, which is embodied and held in synthesis by the members of the council chamber. They all must cooperate in such a way that the entire will in its various parts is sustained as a oneness, as a synthesis, and not by any means conceived under the spell of fragmentation. To them, as they, quote, hold, and this is the quote, hold the will of God in solution, it is one clear note. But just imagine being able to hold that will with all its various parts as one clear note. As they see that will in motion, it is three abiding chords carrying outwards into all the worlds the purpose of the One who for eons will abide. These are, we might say, three archetypal chords which abide. As they impel the will to demonstrate, not just go outward, but to actually demonstrate, it is seven vibratory tones. These tones are differentiated so that they can make their appropriate manifestation in the outer worlds, and will be, of course, mistaken by the majority as separate tones, but really they're all part of one note and represent three archetypes. As they impel the will to demonstrate, it is seven vibratory tones drawing out into the reflected worlds. Notice the reflected worlds. What have I called these? I have called these the mosaic worlds, or maybe worlds. As they impel the will to demonstrate, it is 7 vibratory tones drawing out into the reflected world. That's what we live in out here, the structure of the plan. And that's where we are responsible to see that at least the structure of the plan appears in the reflected worlds. And thus the notes, the chords, and tone, or tones, produce the plan, reveal the purpose, and indicate God's will. And you know, he's moving backwards now. This is a great hint, because he moves from the outer plan upward toward the purpose and finally towards the will. Different students see the will and purpose differently. I've always seen the plan associated with the third aspect of will, the purpose with the second aspect of will, and the will with the first aspect. The will is the great energy behind this pattern we call purpose. And the plan takes us out into the world of effects and uses the factor of differentiation. So pretty much, you know, we work with plan as much as we can. Purpose is more monadic in nature. Will comes from the planetary logos itself, and for us, from the solar logos of our solar system. We're on page 534. This is a quotation from certain of the ancient archives, not to be disclosed, I guess, which constitute the study of the masters. They relate to the nature of Shambhala, its work, and emanating energies. DK, you know, in writing all of these things, has access to factors which to us are deeply mysterious. But he brings forward in at least a semi-understandable way the knowledge found in these archives. We have been given material, the source of which we do not really understand, but somehow it is reaching out to us, and we are presented with it in sufficient depth to begin to understand just a little of what the sources are trying to say in a much deeper way. Shambhala, as it constitutes the synthesis of understanding where our Earth is concerned, because I imagine, you know, there are such synthetic centers on other planets called by other names, is also the center where the highest will of the solar logos is imposed upon the will of the planetary logos, who is, as you know, only a center in his great body of manifestation. And, you know, it is a base of the spine center. There are a number of planets associated with different chakras and with the base of the spine center. Mars is, Mercury is, probably Saturn and Uranus have their own association. Pluto certainly is, but the Earth is considered the base of the spine center for our planetary logos. He's always giving us material that we will be fascinated with, but which can't do us too much good. It will do someone who follows us much more good. But it's important. Shambhala, as it constitutes the synthesis of understanding, and that is so important. You know, different little hints about Shambhala are given so that it doesn't turn out to be simply an unrelatable abstraction. Shambhala, as it constitutes the synthesis of understanding where our Earth is concerned, is also the center where the highest will of the solar logos is imposed upon the will of our planetary logos, who is, as you know, only a center in his greater body of manifestation. I mean, what a potent piece of information that DK is going to tell us is just about worthless to us at this time. With this item of information, you can have no possible concern. The masters themselves are only learning the will of the planetary logos, not the will of the solar logos. I think one has to be at least a 7th degree initiate really to begin in the slightest to understand that, such as, you know, creating of our planet a great station of light, our planetary logos being a divine physicist, as the phrase is given to us. Just the beginning, to be appreciated by very high initiates, and we're in no position to appreciate that. The masters themselves are only learning the will of the planetary logos. They don't know more than a letter or two of his name, and the name is purpose. Maybe they only know one syllable of his name, maybe not even that. The objective of effort in Shambhala is, however, the apprehension of solar purpose, the plan of which is working out on the highest levels of our planetary system, you know, I suppose still on the cosmic physical plane, just as the will, purpose, and plan of Shambhala work out on the 3 lowest levels of our planetary system. Again, this item of information serves only to indicate hierarchical objectives, and those objectives extend away from time and space into the mind of God himself. So taking us really to the cosmic mental plane. I'm beginning to see that, well, I should know by now, and so should we all, that it's best not to skip the reading of anything Master DK wrote. And also there are certain books by Alice Bailey, written herself, that it would be best not to skip. Even though, you know, one wonders about how one has the time to work these things out. Well, I think that may be far enough for right now. It's about an hour program. And we come to one of those charts in a minute. It's 5:34. Yeah, 5:31, and we took it to 5:34. And now I think this is the 31st of May. Well, I think I better not. Yeah, it is the 31st of May. Okay, we'll go on to program number 63 after a little while. But this is foundational material, no question about it, and must not be left out of consideration. What can we learn from the book Initiation, Human and Solar? It's a beginning book, something we may need much later. And what do we learn from this collection of essays that we call Externalization of the Hierarchy? Something indispensable, certain things indispensable. So this is the 31st. And we go on to EXH. And hopefully something today can be accomplished. Okay, friends, I'm working out these adjustments on this new platform. For a number of days, I've been completely indivisible and have hardly, oh, that would be good, completely invisible, and have not really been able to talk to you directly because it was all more or less hidden in darkness and just a simple moving of the computer, and that is somewhat solved. So we will stop our recording and move on at the next opportunity. Today is Pentecost Day, the descent of the Holy Spirit and the rushing of the wind and the tongues of fire and basically the baptism by fire, the taking of the second initiation, which the disciples at that time experienced. So we'll see you soon and continuing with this work. Bye-bye.